Marry me or face execution. Alien Queen's shocking demand took a man's breath away. Thy challenger, Captain Marcus Chen, stood in the middle of the most beautiful room he had ever seen. The walls were made of blue crystal that seemed to glow from inside. The ceiling was so high that he could barely see it. Strange lights danced across the crystal surfaces like water moving in slow motion. But Marcus was not thinking about the beauty around him. He was thinking about the huge alien sitting on the throne in front of him. Queen Vexthara was twice as tall as any human. Her skin was covered in scales that changed color as she moved. They went from deep green to bright silver to purple. Her eyes were large and golden, like the small sun's. When she looked at Marcus, he felt like she could see right through him. Human. The queen said in a voice that echoed through the room. You have seen something that no outsider should ever see. Marcus tried to stay calm. Just 30 minutes ago, he had been looking for his room in the palace. The Zephyrian Empire had invited Earth to send a diplomat for the first time ever. Marcus was that diplomat. It was supposed to be a simple meeting about trade and peace. But he had gotten lost in the huge palace. All the hallways looked the same. To him, when he opened what he thought was his door, he found himself in a large circular room filled with Zephyrian warriors. The warriors were doing some kind of training exercise. They stood on one leg and held heavy weights while balancing on narrow beams high above the ground. It looked incredibly difficult. The warriors' leg muscles were huge and powerful as they held their positions without shaking. Marcus had tried to leave quietly, but one of the warriors saw him. They all stopped and stared. Then they started shouting in their language. Before Marcus knew it, guards had surrounded him and brought him to the queen. I am sorry, Your Majesty, Marcus said. Bowing low, I was lost. I did not mean to see anything. Private, the queen's scales rippled from green to dark red. You witnessed the sacred trial of strength. This ceremony has been secret for over 1,000 years. Only members of the royal family and their chosen partners are allowed to see it. Marcus felt his heart beat faster. I understand this is serious. How can I fix this mistake? The queen stood up from her throne. She was even taller than Marcus had thought. Her footsteps made the crystal floor ring like bells as she walked toward him. Our law is very clear, she said. Any outsider who sees the sacred trial must either join the royal family through marriage or face execution for breaking our most holy traditions. Marcus felt the blood drain from his face. Marriage or execution. Those are your only choices, human. The queen stopped just a few feet away from him. Her golden eyes studied his face carefully. I have never seen a human before. Your kind is much smaller than I expected, and your skin is so soft and pale. Round the throne room, Marcus could see the queen's advisors. They were all large Zephyrians with dark scales and serious expressions. Some of them were whispering to each other and looking at Marcus with unfriendly eyes. Your Majesty, Marcus said carefully, I respect your laws and traditions, but I came here as a representative of Earth. If something happens to me, it could cause problems between our worlds. The queen tilted her head, which was a sign of curiosity among her people. You speak of responsibility to your world. This is interesting. Most who face this choice think only of themselves. One of the advisors stepped forward. He was the largest Zephyrian Marcus had seen yet. His scales were almost black, and his voice was deep and threatening. Your Majesty, the law is clear. The advisor said, this soft creature cannot possibly be worthy of royal marriage. Execute him now and be done with it. But another advisor disagreed. This one had lighter scales and seemed younger. Wait, Chancellor Drex. Perhaps we should test him first. If he truly wishes to marry into the royal line, let him prove his worth. Through the trials, Queen Vexthara raised her hand for silence. The human will have 72 hours to decide. During this time, he will undergo the same trials that all potential royal partners must face. If he chooses marriage and survives the trials, he will become my consort. If he chooses execution, it will be quick and honorable. If he chooses marriage but fails the trials, she paused. Then execution will follow anyway. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. What do these trials involve? Tests of strength, wisdom, and spirit. The queen replied, "They are designed to prove that someone is worthy to stand beside the ruler of the Zephyrian Empire. In 300 years, only 12 candidates have attempted them to survive." The math was not encouraging. Marcus looked around the room. At all the alien faces watching him, some looked curious, others looked hostile, and a few looked almost sorry for him. "I need time to think," Marcus said finally. "Of course." The queen gestured to her guards. "Take him to the trial chambers. He will stay there until he decides. Bring him food and water, but do not let him leave." As the guards moved toward him, Marcus noticed something in the queen's eyes. For just a moment, her expression softened. It was almost like she felt sorry for putting him in this position. "Human," she called as the guards reached him. "What is your name?" "Marcus Chen, Your Majesty." "Marcus Chen," she repeated, pronouncing each word carefully. "I hope you choose wisely. For both our sakes." The guards led Marcus out of the throne room through a different door than he had entered. As they walked through more crystal hallways, one of the guards spoke to him in broken English. "Trial is very hard," the guard said quietly. "Many die. You think careful." Marcus was taken to a small room with a narrow bed, a table, and a window that looked out over the alien city. The door closed behind him with a sound like breaking glass. He sat on the bed and put his head in his hands. Somehow, in the space of 1 hour, he had gone from being a diplomat to being a prisoner facing marriage or death. As the alien sun began to set outside his window, Marcus realized that the guard's warning might have been too kind. The trials weren't just hard. They were designed to kill anyone who wasn't strong enough to be a royal partner, and no human had ever faced them before. Marcus looked out at the strange city below and wondered if he would live to see Earth again. In 71 hours and 50 minutes, he would have to make the most important choice of his life. The question was, could he survive long enough to make it? Marcus woke up when someone knocked on his door. He had barely slept during the night. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the queen's golden gaze and heard her words, "Marriage or execution." A different guard stood at his door. This one was smaller than the others, with bright green scales that reminded Marcus of emeralds. "Time for first trial," the guard said in careful English. "You eat first, need strength." The guard brought Marcus a tray of food. The fruits looked strange but tasted sweet. The bread was purple but filled his stomach. Marcus ate everything, knowing he would need energy for whatever came next. "What is your name?" Marcus asked the guard. "I am Keth," the guard replied. "I watched many trials before. You seem different from others." "Different how?" Keth looked around to make sure no one else was listening. "Others who come here, they angry or scared. You ask questions. You think after breakfast." Keth led Marcus through the crystal hallways to a massive dome-shaped building. Inside, Marcus saw something that made his breath catch in his throat. The trial chamber was enormous. The floor was covered with platforms of different sizes, some only a few feet wide, others large enough for several people. The platforms were at different heights, from just above the ground to over 50 feet in the air. Between the platforms, Marcus could see pools of bubbling liquid that glowed with strange colors. "Welcome to the trial of endurance," said a voice that echoed through the chamber. Marcus looked up and saw Queen Vexthara sitting on a viewing platform high above the trial floor. She wore a crown made of the same glowing crystal as her palace walls, even from far away. Her presence commanded attention. "The rules are simple," the queen announced. "You must remain on the platforms for 6 hours. You cannot touch the ground. You cannot fall into the pools. The chamber will test you with heat, cold, wind, and other challenges. If you survive, you pass the first trial." Marcus looked around and saw that he was not alone. 5 other beings stood on different platforms, for were Zephyrians. But one looked like it came from a completely different world. It had blue skin and long arms that ended in sharp claws. "Begin," the queen called. Immediately, the chamber began to change. The temperature shot up until Marcus felt like he was standing in an oven. Sweat poured down his face. Around him, the other contestants seemed uncomfortable but not in serious trouble. Their thick scales protected them from the heat. Marcus closed his eyes and remembered his training on Earth. Before becoming a diplomat, he had studied with masters from many different cultures. A monk in Tibet had taught him breathing techniques for extreme cold. A yoga teacher in India had shown him how to control his body's response to heat. Marcus slowed his breathing and focused his mind. Instead of fighting the heat, he let his body adjust to it gradually. When he opened his eyes, he felt much better. The heat lasted for 30 minutes. Then suddenly, the chamber became freezing cold. Ice began to form on the platforms. The other contestants shivered and struggled to keep their balance. This time, Marcus remembered lessons from his grandfather, who had been a soldier in Alaska. The cold is just another enemy, his grandfather had said. Don't let it into your mind, and your body will follow. Marcus moved slowly and carefully, keeping his muscles active but not wasting energy. He watched the other contestants and learned from their mistakes. When one Zephyrian nearly slipped on the ice, Marcus saw which movements were dangerous. 2 hours into the trial, the wind started. It came from all directions, sometimes gentle, sometimes so strong that it nearly knocked the contestants off their platforms. Marcus had to jump from his platform to a smaller one nearby. That's when he noticed that the blue-skinned alien was in trouble. The creature was strong, but its long arms made it hard to balance in the wind. It was swaying dangerously on a small platform, about to fall. Marcus looked up at the queen. Her golden eyes were watching everything carefully. He could see other Zephyrian nobles sitting near her, all focused on the trial. Without thinking about the consequences, Marcus jumped to the platform next to the blue alien. Here, Marcus said, extending his hand, grab on. The alien looked surprised but took Marcus's hand. Together, they were able to stay balanced as the wind grew stronger. The queen leaned forward in her seat. Marcus could see confusion and interest on her face. Around her, the noble advisors whispered to each other urgently. Why did you help? Me? The blue alien asked during a brief moment when the wind calmed down. Because you needed help, Marcus replied simply. The alien stared at him with large purple eyes. This is not normal behavior for trial contestants. For the next 3 hours, the chamber threw everything it could at them. Blinding lights, deafening sounds, platforms that moved and tilted, and pools that shot steam high into the air. Marcus used every skill he had learned on Earth. When the platforms tilted, he remembered rock climbing techniques. When the sounds became overwhelming, he used meditation practices to stay focused. But most importantly, he continued to help the other contestants when he could. When a young Zephyrian couldn't reach a jumping point, Marcus showed him a different route. When another contestant looked exhausted, Marcus shared water from his container. Each time he helped someone, Marcus noticed the queen watching more intently. Finally, after 6 long hours, a bell rang through the chamber. The trial was over. Of the 6 contestants who started, 5 had survived. Only one Zephyrian had fallen into a glowing pool and been pulled out by the guards. Marcus stood on his platform, breathing heavily but victorious. His clothes were torn and his hands were cut from gripping the rough crystal surfaces. But he had made it. Contestants, report to the recovery chamber, announced the guard. As Marcus climbed down from his platform, he felt a hand on his shoulder. It was the blue alien he had helped. I am Zix from the Enduring Colonies, the alien said. I owe you my life, human. This is not something I will forget. I'm Marcus. And you don't owe me anything. Zix shook his head. You do not understand. In my culture, a life dead is sacred. If you ever need help, call my name and I will come. In the recovery chamber, medics treated Marcus's minor injuries. As they worked, Keth the guard approached. Queen wants to see you, Keth said quietly. She wants to talk before second trial tomorrow. What's the second trial? Marcus asked. Keth's green scales turned pale. Trial of wisdom is a very bad. Many who survive first trial, they break in second trial. Not body breaks, mind breaks. Marcus felt his stomach drop. What do you mean? Second trial shows you things. Terrible things. Makes you solve problems that have no good answers. Many candidates, they go crazy. They scream and cannot stop screaming. As Keth led Marcus to meet the queen, Marcus wondered what kind of test could drive people insane. And he wondered if his human mind would be strong enough to survive what was coming. The queen was waiting for him in a small room filled with books and strange devices. When she saw him, her scales shifted to a color Marcus had not seen before, a soft gold that seemed almost warm. "You surprised me today, Marcus Chen," she said quietly. "How so? Your Majesty, you helped your competitors. In 300 years of trials, no candidate has ever done that. My advisors are confused." Marcus looked into her golden eyes for the first time. He saw something there besides royal authority. He saw loneliness. "Where I come from," Marcus said, "we believe that helping others makes us stronger, not weaker." The queen was quiet for a long moment. "Tell me about this belief," she said finally. "I have much to learn about humans." As they talked late into the night, Marcus began to understand that Queen Vexthara was not just a ruler. She was a person who carried the weight of an entire empire on her shoulders, and perhaps, for the first time in years, she had found someone who could understand what that meant. But tomorrow would bring the trial of wisdom, and Marcus was beginning to suspect that his survival might depend on more than just his own strength. Marcus spent the night in his room, but he could not sleep every time he closed his eyes. He remembered Keth's warning about the trial of wisdom. People who went crazy. People who screamed and could not stop. When morning came, the same green-scaled guard brought him breakfast, but Keth looked worried. "Today is bad day," Keth said quietly as he set down the food tray. "Many guards. They do not like to work trial of wisdom. Too many candidates break. Makes us sad to watch." "What exactly happens in this trial?" Marcus asked. Keth looked around carefully, then leaned closer. "Trial shows you old problem? Big problem from history. You must solve it. But problem has no good answer. Every choice leads to death and pain. Most candidates, they try same solutions that failed before. Then they see all the death their choices cause. Breaks their minds." Marcus felt his stomach tighten. "How long do I have to solve it? Until you give answer? Or until you break? Some take minutes, some take days." After breakfast, Keth led Marcus to a different building. This one was smaller and darker than the trial chamber from yesterday. Inside, Marcus found a circular room with walls covered in strange symbols that glowed softly blue. Queen Vexthara was already there, along with several of her advisors. Marcus noticed that Chancellor Drex, the large dark-scaled advisor who had wanted to execute him immediately, was watching with particular interest. "Marcus Chen," the queen said formally, "you are about to face the trial of wisdom. This test will show you a real crisis from our history. You must find a solution that our greatest leaders could not. Are you ready?" Marcus nodded. Though his heart was beating fast, the queen touched a crystal panel on the wall. Suddenly, the room disappeared around Marcus. Instead, he found himself standing in what looked like a war room filled with Zephyrian generals and advisors. But these were not real people. They were images from the past. Like a very realistic movie, a general with silver scales was speaking. "Urgently, Your Majesty, the Kraylon Empire has surrounded our capital planet with their war fleet. They demand that we surrender completely or they will destroy every city." Marcus realized he was seeing events from hundreds of years ago. He was somehow taking the place of an ancient Zephyrian ruler during a terrible crisis. "How many ships do they have?" Marcus heard himself ask. The voice was his own, but the image people around him acted as if he was their leader. 5,000. "Warships," another general replied. "We have only 800 ships that can fight. If we attack, we will lose." "What do they want if we surrender?" Marcus asked. "Half our population as slaves, all our technology, all our resources. They will let the other half of our people live, but as servants in their empire." Marcus felt sick. This was an impossible choice, fight and lose, with everyone dying in the war. Surrender and watch half his people become slaves while the others lived in misery. "Show me our options," Marcus said. For the next several hours, the historical simulation played out different scenarios. Marcus watched in horror as every choice led to terrible consequences. When he chose to fight, he watched cities burn and millions die. When he chose to surrender, he watched proud Zephyrian warriors forced into chains. But something felt wrong about this crisis. Marcus was used to analyzing complex problems as a diplomat. The more he studied the situation, the more he noticed details that did not make sense. "Wait," Marcus said suddenly. "Show me the enemy fleet positions again." The simulation displayed the Kralon ships surrounding the planet. Marcus studied them carefully. He had learned about space tactics during his diplomatic training, in case he ever needed to understand military situations. "These ship positions are wrong," Marcus said. "If the Kralon Empire really wanted to destroy the cities, they would position their ships differently. And if they really had 5,000 ships, why are they only showing us 800? The simulation paused. Marcus could feel the real Queen Vexthara watching him from outside the vision. "Computer, show me what this formation is actually designed for," Marcus said. The simulation revealed something surprising. The Kralon ships were not positioned to attack the planet. They were positioned to defend against something else entirely. Marcus thought about human history and all the wars and conflicts he had studied. Sometimes the biggest threat was not the one you could see. "They're not here to conquer us," Marcus said with growing excitement. "They're here because they're running from something bigger. Show me what's happening in the rest of the galaxy." During this time, the simulation expanded to show the wider galaxy. Marcus saw it immediately. A massive invasion force from outside known space was sweeping through both Zephyrian and Kralon territories. "The Kralons are not our enemies," Marcus announced. "They're refugees. Their demand for surrender is actually a desperate attempt to get our help. They need our planet as a base to fight the real enemy together. Instead of choosing between fighting or surrendering, Marcus chose a third option that the ancient leaders had never considered. Open communications with the Kralon fleet. Tell them we know about the outside invasion. Offer them alliance and a place to land their civilian ships. Together, our combined fleets might be strong enough to fight the real threat." The simulation played out this new scenario. Working together, the Zephyrian and Kralon forces were able to stop the outside invasion and save both civilizations. Instead of millions dying, both peoples survived and became allies. The vision faded, and Marcus found himself back in the real trial room. Queen Vexthara was staring at him with wide golden eyes. Around her, the advisors were whispering excitedly to each other. "Impossible," Chancellor Drex said loudly. "The records clearly show that the Kralon Empire was our enemy. They wanted to enslave us." "The records show what people believed at the time," Marcus replied. "But sometimes, what people believe and what is actually true are different things." The Queen stood up slowly. "And for 100 years, you are the first candidate to solve the crisis of the Twin Suns. Every other solution led to destruction and death." "Your Majesty," said another advisor, this one with bright blue scales, "if this human is correct about the historical crisis, it means our textbooks and our understanding of that war are wrong." Marcus noticed something important in the way the advisors were reacting. Some of them seemed excited about his solution. Others, like Chancellor Drex, seemed angry or worried. "We should verify his solution against the old archives," suggested the blue-scaled advisor. "The archives were sealed long ago," Chancellor Drex said quickly. "And even if this human stumbled onto a lucky guess, it proves nothing about his worthiness." Queen Vexthara raised her hand for silence. "Marcus Chen, you have passed the trial of wisdom in a way that no one expected. Tomorrow, you will face the final trial. But tonight, I wish to speak with you privately about your interpretation of our history." As the advisors began to leave, Marcus noticed Chancellor Drex and two other dark-scaled Zephyrians staying behind to whisper urgently to each other. They kept looking at Marcus with expressions that were definitely not friendly. Later that evening, Marcus sat with the Queen in her private study. The room was filled with books, star charts, and ancient artifacts. "Tell me honestly," the Queen said, "how did you know to look beyond the obvious choices?" "On Earth, we have a saying," Marcus replied. "When you hear hoofbeats, think horses, not zebras." But sometimes you really should check if they might be zebras after all. The queen tilted her head in confusion. It means that usually the simple answer is correct. But sometimes the truth is more complicated than it first appears, Marcus explained. In my world, we have learned that understanding your enemy is often more important than defeating them. You speak as if there's always another way to solve any problem. There usually is. If you are willing to look for it. The queen was quiet for a long moment. Marcus Chen, I must tell you something. When I first gave you the choice between marriage and execution, I thought you would be dead within 2 days. But now what? Your Majesty, now I am beginning to think that humans might see the universe very differently than we do. And perhaps that is exactly what our empire needs. Marcus felt encouraged by her words. But he could not shake the feeling that something dangerous was happening in the background. The way Chancellor Drex and his allies had reacted to his success in the trial worried him. Your Majesty, may I ask you something? Of course. Are all of your advisors happy that I have survived this long? The queen's scales darkened to a deep purple. You are very observant, Marcus Chen. No, they are not all happy. Some believe that any outsider who marries into the royal family will weaken our empire. Others believe that new ideas, even from humans, might make us stronger. And what do you believe? I am beginning to believe that the biggest threat to our empire might not be from outside enemies. It might be from those who fear change so much that they would rather see us grow weak than risk growing different. As Marcus returned to his room that night, he could not help but notice that there were more guards in the hallways than usual, and several of them had the same dark scales as Chancellor Drex. Marcus had survived the trials and was beginning to understand the queen as a person, not just a ruler, but he was also beginning to. Marcus woke up before dawn on the day of his final trial. Something felt wrong, but he could not identify what it was. The palace seemed quieter than usual. Even the crystal walls, which normally hum with soft energy, seemed dim. When Keth brought his breakfast, the green-scaled guard looked nervous. Something happening today, Keth whispered as he set down the food. Many guards called to special meeting last night. Chancellor Drex giving new orders. What kind of orders? Marcus asked. Keth glanced around carefully. Do not know exactly. But some guards, they do not look happy. Some asked questions about loyalty to Queen. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. Keth, do you think the Queen is in danger? I'm only guard. I do not know politics. But, Keth paused. You help people in trials. You different than others who come here. Maybe some people, they not want different. After breakfast, Marcus was escorted to the final trial chamber. This room was different from the others. It was completely white and empty except for a single chair in the center. Queen Vexthara sat on her viewing platform above. But Marcus noticed that several of her usual advisors were missing. Marcus Chen, the queen announced, you face the trial of spirit. This test will show you the deepest parts of yourself. You will see your fears, your failures, and your true nature. Many candidates discover that they do not like what they find. Marcus sat in the chair and closed his eyes as instructed. Immediately, the white room around him changed into scenes from his life on Earth. He saw his childhood, his mistakes, his moments of doubt and fear. But instead of being overwhelmed by negative emotions, Marcus found himself thinking about how each experience had taught him something valuable. His failures had made him more understanding of others. His fears had taught him courage. His doubts had taught him to ask better questions. The trial continued for what felt like hours, showing Marcus every difficult moment of his life. But each time, instead of breaking him down, the experience seemed to make him stronger and more certain about who he was. Finally, the vision stopped. Marcus opened his eyes and found himself back in the white chamber. Above him, Queen Vexthara was smiling for the first time since he had met her. You have passed all 3 trials, she announced. No candidate in the history of our empire has. Her words were cut off by a terrible sound. The crystal walls of the chamber exploded inward as armed Zephyrians in dark armor burst through. At their head was Chancellor Drex, carrying a weapon that crackled with blue energy. "Your Majesty," Drex shouted, "your reign ends today. You have dishonored our empire by considering marriage to this weak human." Marcus saw immediately what was happening. The trial had been a trap, while he was focused on the spiritual test. The conspirators had surrounded the chamber, but Marcus also saw something that the attackers had not expected. During his years of diplomatic training, he had also learned self-defense from masters around the world. Humans might be physically weaker than Zephyrians, but they were faster and more flexible. As the first attacker rushed toward the queen's platform, Marcus moved. He grabbed the chair he had been sitting in and threw it at the attacker's legs. The heavy Zephyrian crashed to the ground. "Your Majesty, get down," Marcus shouted as he rolled across the floor to avoid energy blasts. From Drex's weapon, the queen dropped behind her protective barrier. But Marcus could see that the conspirators had planned for this. More attackers were coming through hidden passages that led directly to her platform. Marcus had to think fast. Zephyrians were stronger, but they were also slower and less flexible than humans. He used his smaller size to slip between them, using techniques he had learned from martial artists in China and wrestlers in Mongolia. When one attacker tried to grab him, Marcus ducked low and struck at pressure points that he hoped worked the same way on Zephyrian anatomy. When another swung a heavy weapon, Marcus used the attacker's own momentum to send him crashing into the wall. "Impossible," Drex roared. "How can this soft creature fight our warriors?" "Because you underestimated him," came a new voice. Marcus looked up to see Keth and several other guards rushing into the chamber. But these guards were fighting against the attackers, not helping them. "The queen has loyal guards too," Keth called to Marcus as he tackled one of Drex's warriors. "We knew something was wrong." The battle was short but intense. Working together, Marcus, Keth, and the loyal guards managed to defeat the attackers. Chancellor Drex himself was captured when Marcus used a simple trip technique to send the large Zephyrian crashing into his own men. When the fighting ended, Queen Vextara climbed down from her platform. Her golden eyes were wide with shock and something that looked like gratitude. "Marcus," she said breathlessly, "you saved my life." "We all did," Marcus replied, gesturing to Keth and the other guards. "But your Majesty, we need to find out how deep this conspiracy goes." Over the next few hours, as security forces rounded up the remaining conspirators, the truth came out. Chancellor Drex and his allies had been planning to overthrow the queen for months. They believed her rule was too soft and that the empire needed a more aggressive leader. "The humans' arrival gave us the perfect opportunity," Drex confessed. When questioned if he failed the trials and was executed, "We could claim the queen was weak for even allowing an outsider to attempt them. If he succeeded and married her, we could claim she was dishonoring our traditions. Either way, we could justify removing her from power." But there was more to the truth than just political ambition. That evening, as Marcus and the queen sat in her private study reviewing the conspiracy documents, she made a confession that surprised him. "Marcus," she said quietly, "I must tell you something about the day we first met. The ultimatum I gave you, marriage or execution, it was not entirely my own idea." Marcus looked up from the papers he was reading. "What do you mean?" "My advisors have been pressuring me for months to marry and produce an heir. When you stumbled into the sacred trial, Chancellor Drex was the one who insisted that our ancient law demanded marriage or death. I went along with it because I was curious about you. Curious about me specifically, or about humans in general." The queen's scale shifted to a soft gold color. "Both, but mostly about you. The way you handled seeing the trial, the way you spoke about responsibility to your world. It was different from anything I had experienced." Marcus set down the papers and looked at her carefully. "Are you saying that the whole situation was manipulated by the conspirators?" "Partly. Yes, they wanted to create a crisis that would make me look weak or foolish. But Marcus," she paused and looked directly into his eyes, "even knowing that, my feelings about you have become real. You have shown me what it means to think differently, to find solutions where others see only problems." Marcus felt his heart racing. "Your Majesty, what are you saying?" I am saying that tomorrow, you must still make your final choice, marriage or freedom. But now the choice is not about ancient laws or political pressure. It is about whether two people from different worlds can find a way to build something better together. Marcus stood up and walked to the window that looked out over the Crystal City. Below, he could see Zephyrian citizens going about their daily lives, unaware of how close their empire had come to civil war. "There is something I need to tell you too," Marcus said finally. "During all these trials, I have been thinking about more than just my own survival." "What do you mean?" Marcus turned back to face her. "I think there might be a third option, something that no one has considered yet, something that could help both our peoples and honor both our traditions." The queen stood up, her eyes bright with curiosity. "Tell me, tomorrow, when I give my final answer. I want to propose something that has never been done before in the history of either of our worlds." "What?" Marcus smiled, feeling more confident than he had since arriving on the Zephyrian homeworld. "Trust me, Your Majesty, I think you are going to like it." As they talked late into the night, planning for the future, Marcus realized that he had already made his choice. The question now was whether the queen and her people would be brave enough to accept the solution he had in mind. Outside the Crystal Palace, the alien stars shone down onto very different beings who had found something unexpected in each other, not just attraction or political alliance, but a shared vision of what the future could become. Tomorrow would bring the final choice. But tonight, Marcus knew that whatever happened, he had already changed both their worlds forever. The Great Throne Room had never seen a gathering like this one. Representatives from across the Zephyrian Empire filled the crystal chamber, their scales reflecting the morning light in thousands of different colors. News of the conspiracy and Marcus's role in stopping it had spread quickly through the empire. Queen Vexthara sat on her throne, wearing the ceremonial crown of her ancestors. But Marcus could see past the formal mask she wore for public occasions. In her golden eyes, he saw nervousness, hope, and curiosity about what he would say. "Citizens of the Zephyrian Empire," the queen announced, her voice echoing through the chamber. "We gather today to witness the final choice of Marcus Chen, the human who has completed our sacred trials and helped save our throne from treachery." Marcus stood in the center of the room, wearing simple clothes that Keth had brought him. Not royal robes, not prison garments, just plain fabric that represented who he really was. Around him, hundreds of Zephyrian faces watched with intense interest. "Marcus Chen," the queen said formally, "you have survived the trial of endurance, solved the trial of wisdom, and passed the trial of spirit according to our ancient laws. You must now choose marriage to join our royal family, or honorable execution for witnessing our sacred ceremony." Marcus took a deep breath. This was the moment he had been planning for since his conversation with the queen the night before. "Your Majesty, honored citizens of the Zephyrian Empire," Marcus began, his voice calm and clear. "I stand before you not just as a human, but as someone who has learned to respect and admire your civilization. You have shown me strength, wisdom, and honor that I will never forget." The crowd murmured quietly. This was not what they had expected him to say. However, Marcus continued, "I believe that the choice between marriage and execution, while traditional, does not serve the best interests of either of our peoples." Gasps echoed through the chamber. Several Zephyrian nobles stood up from their seats, their scales flushing with shock and anger. Instead, Marcus said before anyone could interrupt, "I propose a third option, one that honors your ancient laws, while creating something new and beneficial for both our worlds." Queen Vexthara leaned forward on her throne, explained this third option. Marcus had practiced this speech in his mind dozens of times, but now that the moment had come, he spoke from his heart. "Your ancient law was created to protect the sacred traditions of your people from outsiders who might not understand or respect them. But what if, instead of an outsider looking in, you had a partner who could help build bridges between worlds?" He gestured to the crowd around him. "I have learned much about Zephyrian culture in the past few days. Your strength, your honor, your commitment to tradition. But I have also seen that your empire faces challenges that could benefit from fresh perspectives. "What do you propose specifically?" asked one of the noble advisors. "I propose that I become the first official cultural ambassador between Earth and the Zephyrian Empire, not through marriage, but through a formal alliance that creates ongoing exchange between our peoples." The crowd erupted in surprised conversation. Marcus raised his voice to continue. "This would satisfy your ancient law because instead of an outsider violating your traditions, I would become someone dedicated to understanding and preserving them. At the same time, our two civilizations could learn from each other in ways that make both stronger." Queen Vexthara stood up slowly. "You would give up the chance to join the royal family in favor of serving as a bridge between worlds, Your Majesty. I believe that building understanding between our peoples is more important than any personal gain." And Marcus paused, looking directly at her. "I believe that strong alliances are built on mutual respect and shared goals, not on forced choices." The Queen's scales shifted to that warm gold color Marcus had come to recognize. "Tell us more about this alliance you envision." Marcus had thought about this carefully. Human technology and Zephyrian engineering working together. Human diplomatic methods and Zephyrian honor creating new ways to solve conflicts. Cultural exchanges that let both our peoples learn from each other's strengths. An elderly Zephyrian with silver scales stepped forward. "Young human, your idea is interesting, but our law specifically requires marriage or death. How can we change laws that have existed for 1,000 years?" Marcus smiled. This was the part he was most proud of. "Honored elder, I do not ask you to change your laws. I ask you to expand them. Your law says that outsiders who witness the sacred trial must join the royal family or face execution. But what if there was a way for someone to join the family without marriage?" The Queen's eyes widened as she understood. "Adoption," she said quietly. "Exactly. In many human cultures, and I suspect in Zephyrian culture as well, family bonds can be created through choice and honor, not just marriage. If Your Majesty were to formally adopt me as a brother of the royal house, I would be part of the family, while remaining free to serve as an ambassador." The crowd fell silent as they considered this possibility. It was so simple, yet so revolutionary, that no one had ever thought of it before. The elderly advisor nodded slowly. "The law does not specify that joining the family must be through marriage. Adoption has been part of our culture since ancient times." "This human thinks like a diplomat and a scholar," said another noble. "He finds solutions where others see only problems." Queen Vexthara stepped down from her throne and walked to where Marcus stood. Her golden eyes were bright with something that looked like pride. "Marcus Chen," she said formally, "do you accept adoption into the royal house of Zephyria, with all the responsibilities and honors that brings?" "I do, Your Majesty." "And do you accept the position of first cultural ambassador between our worlds?" "I do." The Queen turned to address her people. "Citizens of the Zephyrian Empire, I present to you Marcus Chen, royal brother and first ambassador to Earth. Let this day mark the beginning of a new age of cooperation between our peoples." The crystal chamber erupted in cheers. Marcus saw Keth in the crowd, his green scales bright with happiness. He saw Zix, the blue alien he had helped during the trials, nodding with approval. Even many of the nobles who had seemed doubtful were now applauding. 6 months later, Marcus stood on the observation deck of the first joint human-Zephyrian space station. Ships from both worlds moved peacefully through space around him, carrying diplomats, scientists, and cultural exchange students. Through the large window, he could see the blue-green planet Earth in the distance, and beyond it, the glowing crystal cities of the Zephyrian homeworld. His communication device chimed with a message from Queen Vexthara, or as he now called her, his sister Thara. The message was simple but meaningful. The trade agreement with the Endorian colonies was signed today. Zix sends his regards. How are the preparations for the first human Zephyrian cultural festival? Marcus smiled as he typed his reply. Everything is ready. I think both our peoples are going to learn a lot from each other. As he watched ships from dozens of different worlds docking at the station, Marcus reflected on how much had changed. What had started as a simple diplomatic mission had become something much larger. Humans were no longer alone in the galaxy, and the Zephyrian Empire was no longer isolated by its traditions. The marriage or execution ultimatum that had once seemed like an impossible choice had become the foundation for something neither species could have achieved alone, a true partnership between worlds. Marcus had discovered that the greatest human strength was not superior technology or physical power. It was the ability to see possibilities that others missed, to find third options when everyone else saw only two choices, and to build bridges instead of walls. As the alien sun set beyond the space station, Marcus knew that this was just the beginning. The galaxy was full of different peoples, different cultures, and different challenges. But if humans could teach others to look for creative solutions, and if other species could teach humans their own unique strengths, there was no limit to what they could accomplish together. The ultimatum had ended, the alliance had begun, and the future was brighter than anyone had dared to imagine.